Species. Unite.
I really felt like I turned into a bird. The way I was playing was changed. Like I played the way nobody would play a clarinet unless they had spent weeks listening to nightingales.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Novogratz. This is Species Unite. We have a favor to ask. If you liked today's episode and you have a spare minute, could you please rate and review Species Unite on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts? It really helps people to find the show. This conversation is with David Rothenberg. Amongst many other things, David is an interspecies musician. That means he plays music with whales and with birds and with insects and with all sorts of nature around him. He's also a writer. He's written many books, including Why Birds Sing, Whale Music, and Nightingales in Berlin, which was also made into a film. And he is a professor of philosophy and music at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. So before I learned about you, I didn't know anybody was an interspecies musician. I didn't even know that it existed as an art. It really made me wonder, like when you were a kid, is this something you thought about, or like did you know about it?
When I was a kid, my parents moved us from like the Upper West Side to Connecticut, and I kind of didn't have any friends and wandered in the woods talking to myself alone. I started paying attention to nature a lot and like really wanting to wander in the woods and such. But it was in high school when I heard there actually was a musician in Connecticut who played music with wolves and whales named Paul Winter. And he didn't live that far from me. He's a saxophonist. He's in his 80s now. So I heard about this. This sounds kind of cool. I want to meet this guy. It turned out that in the Westport School of Music, there's a cellist teaching there who played in Paul Winter's group. And both of us got thrown out of this school around the same time. He was thrown out for teaching too much improvisation. It was kind of a conservative place. And I was thrown out for snickering at the owner, who I found kind of, pretentious. And like, you're not showing enough respect out. So we both like were sort of removed from the premises and started to get to know each other. Then I started playing with him. And so I learned about this. But I didn't do that much with it for like 20 years. I sort of knew about this, and then I went off and did different things.
Were you mostly doing music?
I was like, I kind of was never wanted to just do one thing. I kind of was doing music. I had my own way of performing and composing that was kind of in between jazz and electronic music and other things. It wasn't quite in any clear tradition. I also was very concerned with environmental issues. I really thought that, this was in early 1980s already, like the planet's just being destroyed by us. We have to do something. I have to work on this. And so I studied those things. After college, I went to work for environmental magazines in England and stuff. So I really wanted to do that, but at the same time, I was doing music. And then over many years, different things, I sort of realized I really had to combine these things and go back.
How did that happen?
Through another person of that same generation, actually even a Canadian composer named Murray Schafer, passed away last year, also in his 80s. He was a polymath type character, wrote a lot of books about music. He wrote a famous book called The Tuning of the World. It's also called The Soundscape. And he popularized this idea you should listen to the world and care about these sounds that are disappearing along with everything else. And when he turned 60, there was a big conference in Canada celebrating this. And I went to that and realized there was this whole community of people interested in this stuff scattered around the world. So I decided I would get to know these people. That's kind of how it started. So that was like in 1993. I went there. I wouldn't say it's a huge movement, but it's growing, and there are enough people taking all their own approaches to this whole topic that nature is full of music. It's made by other species. It's made by the land itself, the water, the sky. And if you hear it as all being interconnected, then you have one more reason to care about the planet and save it. Lots of indigenous people speak about this kind of thing. And then a lot of musicians listen and get their ideas from the world around them and the shapes, forms, rhythms, sounds of nature. But then the idea of interacting directly with musicians who don't happen to be human, that sort of really changes your music, pushes you in directions you might not expect. So anyone who does that has to be open enough to whole new worlds of what could possibly count as being music.
What were the first other species that you interacted with musically?
The first time I did this was when I was still in high school in the summer in the Sierra Nevada in California, when I'd just met these Paul Winter people. I had a summer job at Earthwatch Expedition, which is this organization that would send people to help scientists. And these ornithologists in California, they were counting all the birds flying around these meadows. I had this little map, and we banded the birds on one side of the valley. They'd fly to the other side, and we just walk around seeing what they were doing. That's like red, yellow, green, and this is this one. And so it was really like playing a game for weeks on end. And then when I was done, I would sit and play music, take a little flute and play it with these birds and feel like this was an interesting life, very much removed from like the regular human world. So that's when I started tentatively playing around with this.
And then you didn't do it for a while.
Yeah, and when I came back, one guy I met at this conference, Michael Pestle, at the time he was professor of art at Chatham College in Pittsburgh, and he said, you got to come. They have this aviary. In fact, it's the National Aviary in Pittsburgh. You got to come play with the birds. It's really amazing. I hadn't thought that playing with birds in captivity could be interesting until I went there. Then I saw that, it could be very interesting, and you would learn things about these birds that you couldn't figure out except by playing along with them.
Like what?
Well, there's a little clip on YouTube. The first time I played with a bird, from year 2000. And so I'm wandering around with my clarinet before the aviary opens, and nobody seems to pay attention except one bird suddenly gets interested. And I don't know anything about this bird except he's singing along with what I'm doing. It's kind of like performing a duet. Turned out to be a white-crested laughing thrush, which is a pretty common bird in zoos because they kind of live anywhere, and they're interested in people. They follow you around, they make sounds. And so I thought, since I'd taken biology class, I knew that, male birds were singing to attract a mate and defend their territory. So I thought this was what he must be doing. But then I read about the bird, and that's not what laughing thrushes do. The males and females both sing and sing this kind of interactive duet so they can find each other in very thick thickets where they live and they can't see each other. And so then I realized, by playing along with this bird, it sent me on this trajectory to learn things about it that weren't what I thought. Right. And turns out each species is kind of a world into themselves, and most things about them we don't know, even though we can identify them. Okay, this is a white-breasted nuthatch, and this is a chickadee, check, but we don't know their whole way of experiencing the world except those that delve deeper into it. And usually it's just a few species, just a few people who take that time to learn about something different than us, understandably. But there's just so much about a way of life and so much aesthetics in the different worlds of birds. Birds are the easiest because there are so much variety right around. Charles Darwin knew that evolution was full of the kind of production of weird, crazy stuff that wasn't exactly useful. We all know about survival of the fittest, but that doesn't really explain much of what's going on in nature. There's also survival of the beautiful, survival of the weird, the crazy, the fun. He recognized that this was a problem. He had to deal with this. Anything written by Darwin is online. There's a vast concordance you can find to this letter he wrote to Asa Gray, a botanist. He said, the peacock's tail, it really makes me sick. I can't explain it. How could such a thing have evolved? If things evolve for the survival of the fittest, why would a tail like that evolve? It's completely ridiculous. It's not fit. You have to carry around this huge weight. Pity the poor peacock who wants to fly. Can't really. It's hard.
Survival of the most beautiful.
That's why there's sexual selection, survival of weird, crazy stuff that just gets selected for because one sex likes it. It's not always females. Sometimes females have the weird displays, and the males are picking things. So we know a lot about what happened in the past, these distant things.
Yeah.
But we don't know that much about the music of animals in the past. We know a little bit.
You've done a lot of work with whales. Mm-hmm. We didn't even know whales sang, right, until not that long ago. In the big picture.
Because it's underwater. I mean, you can't really hear it without an underwater microphone. Although the fact is you can. But why didn't anybody hear it?
But no one talked about it.
They didn't
right?
talk about it yet. It's a little bit of a mystery. If you go diving where there's a lot of singing whales, you're going to hear something. So that some people think the sirens Odysseus heard were singing humpback whales, or that people just didn't talk about this because they didn't think it was really there. Because how could there be this sound? And it's so faint, it sounds like it's inside your head. And maybe people didn't dive so much when there were so many whales because people were hunting them. The whales stayed out of people's way until we started to be nicer to them, and then they were more around. And it's only the humpbacks that do this kind of thing.
Right.
The long, complex songs. We knew about other ones making sounds, like beluga whales, because they'll come up. They're like big white dolphins. They'll make sound in the air, and they'll show a real interest in humans.
But they don't sing. What kind of sounds do they make?
They make interesting dolphin-like sounds that are easier to hear. Very, very much like talking. And people knew for centuries that these animals would follow you around and make sounds. But again, there weren't that many around where culture was recounted. They live more in the north. So there's the other idea is this was secret knowledge that everyone knew that we just didn't want to tell people.
Yeah.
So, but the fact is that once this recordings came out, and then at first the Navy says nobody can find out about this.
This is like when the
1950s, yeah.
50s, yeah.
Like it's like James Bond. They didn't want people to find out about it they said this is an expensive classified project to listen underwater, and whatever we find belongs to us. We don't want it. We'd really like to hear enemy submarines, but we haven't heard any. So we just heard all these marine mammals. So we got to do something with this knowledge.
But why keep it quiet?
After a while, that's what they said. Why keep it quiet? So by the end of the 60s, it was.
So what happened with the scientists with the whales?
Why did it take that amount of time?
Yeah, and how did it come out?
It's because the people who recorded said this is just beautiful. People should hear these. But it's classified. Why should it be classified? It's just some sound underwater that we happen not to have been able to hear before. Like, let people hear it. Okay, Also, that somebody decided it didn't need to be so secret. And then these two scientists, Roger Payne and Scott McVeigh, decided to figure out the structure, which wasn't so easy in those days. So they made sonograms, printing out the frequency against time using this thermal paper, machines in the old days. And after a few days, the paper turns all black. You have to trace over it. And a little bit at a time. For them, it was a revelation that there was a structure that was difficult to hear, but you could see it when you printed it out. And so then they wrote a scientific paper that has the very unusual line, the humpback whale emits a series of surprisingly beautiful sounds, because science papers don't talk about beauty like that. And no paper since has mentioned the beauty of humpback whale songs. And there have been a lot. They don't mention that. But those guys didn't care what you should or shouldn't do because they were kind of really special types.
Yeah.
And Scott McVeigh is still around, and I've talked about this with him for many, many years. Roger Payne passed away this year, and both of them had different trajectories after this moment, but they saw the potential of this song to get people to care about whales. Believe it or not, that the environmental movement did not care about whales in the early 1970s. They didn't know. Someone might say, look, we're killing all these whales, but nobody saw whales. So people weren't interested in this until this song got to be very popular. This is the best-selling nature recording of all time.
Still today, right?
Well, cumulatively.
Yeah.
This week, I don't know. If that's the
Right.
case, but altogether, it's just became something that was, something new, beautiful, and special. People would put it on and just start to cry. It really grabbed people. And so it became something that surprisingly spread through culture in interesting ways. And when I wrote this book about that, I was really interested in what different kinds of musicians would do with this information when it happened and how it's happened over time. as opposed to bird song, where people have been listening to, talking about, responding to as long as there have been people, hundreds, thousands of years. Whale song, the public response began in the late 1960s. So you can just see what's happened in a rapid amount of time.
Oh, it's a game changer for whales, right? Like,
Yeah.
we still have whales because of that.
I would say so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And no one's really hunting them anymore except for
Some people, yeah.
Norway,
Yeah,
Iceland,
exactly.
Japan.
Because of this, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I've read in your book about the Japanese scientists. We talk about that when they learned about the whale songs.
Yeah, Scott McVeigh told me he went there with piles of records and went on, met them and was on radio and TV and listened to the songs. And the executives of whaling corporations with tears in their eyes said, we didn't know.
It's so dramatic.
I could just imagine this. Yeah, it's not like it stopped them right away.
No, it still hasn't stopped them.
Yeah,
actually,
but it got the world to think about whales very differently.
Well, and for the whole world, or the majority of the world, to really change their view on one animal.
Right.
And
this can
stop
happen, yeah.
destroying it. Like it's one of the best PR stories in the history of any species, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories like this. I was just reading on the train this week's New Yorker. There's an article about Chinese squid fishing. About Ian Urbina and outlaw fishing. He goes on these boats. Like, what's really going on? Like, nobody in America ate squid until this one guy, some business researcher, said, "Let's rename it calamari and fry it." And it was in 1974. Can you believe that?
Wow.
That's when, people will eat squid. And so then it became this huge thing. And so now we need a lot of squid. We don't care where it comes from, how we get it. And if you read this article, you'll say, oh my God, this is like the worst fishing story I've ever read. This boat and the horrible conditions and things like that. So you can change people's attitude towards an animal in very different ways, or a vegetable or a fruit, or
sure.
We're not fixed. The way people are living is constantly changing.
No, and we think we are. Yeah. We think, we eat this way and we don't eat that, and we're not.
Yeah, right.
When did you first play music with whales, and how did that go?
I knew that Hawaii was the easiest place. There were so many whales. There were these scientists who tentatively agreed to have me come out with them, but they also thought I might be kind of weird being a musician, So they weren't that open. Then there was another guy, I think I had heard about him in advance, that he had this buoy constantly broadcasting whale songs 24 hours a day to the world. And so he said he would help me.
How do you play with them, though?
Well, you get an underwater microphone to listen to them, and then you get an underwater speaker. That's harder, but still not too hard to find. And then I'm playing clarinets and wind instruments on boat, and the whale is hearing underwater, and I'm listening to them. I have on headphones, and then you create some kind of above water and below water music.
Can you tell if they are interested?
Sometimes it's hard to tell because it's hard to tell who this humpback whale song is for. We know that it's the males who are singing, and we know that biologists will say this is to attract the attention of female whales. Okay, we discovered this in the 1950s. How often do you think we've ever seen a female whale show any response to this song? Zero. We've never seen any response. Sometimes the males respond and do these kind of ritual movements together, like they're listening to each other. We have no idea what it's for or why they're doing it, why it's so complicated for an animal song. There's no reason for this to have evolved, and we don't know what it's for. We don't know what it does. And generally it's still seen as just like whatever, some crazy thing that evolved, like a mockingbird song. No reason that's so complicated. A nightingale song,
or a bonding thing, right?
Yeah, but we don't know why. Why does the chickadee song is doo doo, and it's for the same purpose as the mockingbird singing for an hour. Why does the mockingbird sing for an hour? Is it leads a more desperate life, or is it like they just they evolved this? We don't know. We don't see anyone pay attention to mockingbird songs. They're just performing this song. You don't see females come and listening. Some of the strangest bird songs, no one knows why they're there. One of my favorites, the European marsh warbler. This is the one bird we know. It flies to Africa. It learns all these African bird songs, comes back to Europe and sings them one after another really fast. And it was a teenage girl who discovered this in the 1970s. Nobody believed what she was, but she had listened to a lot of bird song tapes. So she knew what she was talking about, but nobody believed her. So then she went to college and graduate school and became the world expert on this song. Like, here's my 100-page analysis. This is what's going on. Nobody said anything. No one else is going to touch this work. It's too hard to have done it. And so,
to go back to the humpbacks for a sec, though.
Back to the humpbacks.
So it's just the males that sing. They sing together, and the song changes. Does it change? It evolves, yearly, or
it can change? It changes as a group. A new element somehow appears, and the other ones pick it up. And
it's all the whales together in that
in a different ocean. This is very weird. Like, birds have distinct differences from one to another, but usually it's believed every individual wants to be different than another one. Every whale seems to be singing alone. Nobody's talked about how they listen to each other at all. But when you hear it, you hear them together because it carries so far.
Are they singing in unison?
No, it's like one's here. They have a whole cycle they're going through, another's doing the cycle here. Now, the cycle has overlapping patterns, so it's a little bit like a round. You hear some of these together. You hear patterns emerge, but we don't know if they're really listening to each other. It's amazing how hard it is to learn what's going on underwater. You don't know where the whale is. You don't know what it's about.
I know we don't know this, and there's AI trying to figure out a lot of it at the moment. But do we know how much is communication and how much is singing?
Well, what is communication? Like, is music communication, or is only language communication? I would say music's a form of communication, and it's one that's very powerful and gets its message across, often when we don't even know what's happening. Like, why do people cry when they hear a whale song? They don't know what it's supposed to be about, but it touches us. It can cross these species lines. That's what really interests me. So it's all communication. What animals have something like language? Interestingly enough, the one animal that has something we think is closest to language, because the things it does refer to other things, is the dance of the honeybee. That's like a language. They dance. It has information that's separate from what they're doing. Like, it's really symbolic communication. But other animals, we don't know if they have that. Kon Slobodchikov thinks prairie dogs have it. Like, they talk about people when they're gone, like, oh, that's the guy with the weird hat, But, people don't believe him. He spent 45 years or so listening to them. He probably knows something. But, animals are, for all their intelligence, all the kinds of communication they have, they're not known for complicated linguistic structures that say things. But the music does. I made a rare foray into science, working with some biologists to demonstrate what mockingbirds are doing. They're not just copying other birds' songs. They're composing using very specific rules, which is why we can tell it's a mockingbird and not some other bird. And so we decided to describe that in specific scientific type statistical terms to impress scientists. They morph from one sound to another. They're like sampling. They're playing around. So they'll go like teacher, 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 imitating an ovenbird, but then they'll go teacher, teacher, teacher with a little bit of blue jay mixed in, and then they'll slow it down like, and that slowed down sound comes from some other bird. But the logic they're following is like sonically looking for relationships, changing one aspect but not changing everything, like the kind of rules a composer would use, things like that. Or if you're playing around with sound, if you're sampling beats or tones and you just change the pitch, stretch it, squeeze it or something.
And so that could be what they're doing, right?
They're definitely doing this. Yeah. We don't know why they're doing it, but it is what they're doing. And for some reason, no one thought this was worth really figuring out before.
But we don't know why we do a lot of what we do.
We don't know why we do it exactly. What? But I'm interested still in the what, isn't it amazing they're doing this and that the function does not do a good job explaining why they do it. Like, they're trying to defend their territory and attract a mate. Why does the chickadee do it with 2 notes? And the mockingbird needs to go on and on and on. What is it about this bird that needs that? There isn't anything. It just evolved. It's like a peacock's tail evolved. It's crazy feathers and things like this. So when you start paying attention to any of these things, the most unlikely locations in nature become full of music and possibility and wonder and beauty.
And your latest endeavor is really unlikely.
Yeah, it's about underwater pond sounds. And I always knew that ponds sounded pretty cool if you stuck a different kind of hydrophone in them, more like a contact microphone, picks up close sounds that it would sound like weird electronic music. But I only started doing it really during the pandemic when you couldn't go anywhere else. And I realized there were so many crazy things and started making music out of this and writing a book about that. It's also a book about being unable to travel and trying to connect with people through music around the world, through these sounds whose meaning we don't understand. So different characters come in who I'd send the recordings to, and we'd sit on Zoom and make music together and kind of, find this music and then kind of wonder what it takes to consider it as music. And it's also a mixture of animals and plants. Like, what's the difference between a plant and an animal? There's a sonic difference that maybe you can find in the pond. Oh, these are plants. Oh, that's an animal. But you don't always know.
Are the plants making music in the pond?
The plants are making more rhythms. They sound more like animals. And the insects might sound more like a little plant or something. Yeah. So you rhythmic sounds come from photosynthesis, like tiny bits of oxygen that you can't even see, invisible bubbles being released to the world. Like if you stick a hydrophone in a fizzy drink, you hear rhythms and you can see those bubbles. But the ones in a pond you can't see; they're too tiny. But you hear the same kind of rhythms.
But so there's a whole symphony going on in a pond?
Exactly, and this people don't know about it, and it's right here. You can go into Central Park. You'll hear, in addition to the subway and all kinds of things. And if a snapping turtle doesn't bite the end of your hydrophone, you'll.
And how do you
hear.
know what's what though?
You don't. And some of them you can argue whether this sounds like something that just comes from movement of plant matter, or is this an animal? Most likely insects, also some fish. Only recently, some grad student discovered that some turtles were making sounds. Like no one's looking at this. Things like fish, like little low rhythms, but we don't know which fish are doing this. Like it's not really studied. Ocean fish we know a little more about because people want to catch them. Cod, the sounds of cod are the most studied among fish sounds.
What kind of sounds did cod make?
Also little grunts, different things. But having heard these talks about it, I don't know how much they've transposed the sound of cod into something we can hear or not, whether they actually sound like that or do you have to speed them up, slow them down and things. I try to work mostly with the actual pond sounds to know this is what's here.
Yeah.
Rather than, you can easily transform it into all manner of things, which I also do, but I want to demonstrate that this is really happening. Last summer, I was in Canada on Grand Manan Island, and I was dragging this hydrophone underwater. And just by chance, it came to one place between these plants there, and right there it was making this amazing sound. So this might convince someone, like, okay, the plants have something to do with this. It's not really a scientific experiment, but here, there are no plants, I move it, now all this stuff is happening, so there's something going on here. This is the level of, knowledge, but there's something going on is very surprising, very rhythmic.
Talk about the nightingales in Berlin.
Yeah.
I watched the film and it's absolutely stunning.
Thanks. I was going to go on sabbatical. I forget what's a good place everyone in my family would like. My wife is an artist. My son, who was a ninth grader, we go to Berlin. None of us has really been there. That has to be fun. And I'd heard that people wrote about go out and listen to the nightingales in spring. I said, oh, they didn't say go out and play music with them. Surely this is a good place for that. So that's where we started this process, 2014. And then every year since then, except for the pandemic, I've gone back. And that's how I wrote the book and then this film, different versions of the album. And now it's now people do it. I'm not the only one.
But when you first did it, were you talking about that?
People thought it was what, Yeah, and I was there. I was out with some journalists. What are you doing? We're playing along with the sound. And Nightingale's not going to go anywhere when he starts singing because they compete with sound. They really do. So he starts singing. You play back, or you sample him, play himself back. He's going to go what? He's going to stay there for hours. And if he's competing with you, he's going to win. You're going to get tired before he does. He's going to be there for hours and hours. Unless, however, if a female shows up, they get really flustered. They can't really sing so well anymore. I've seen this happen. I didn't believe it when I heard it. You mean, what? When the females come, they can't really sing anymore? Like, what's the point of all this? Yeah, watch what happens. And then they get kind of flustered. So again, it questions the whole functional explanation when you hear about things like this.
Right. With all the different species you've played with, when you're making music with them, are there moments where you're like, Or do you even care about this? Where you're like, oh, they're in it with me?
I'm not so interested in them copying me or me copying them. I'm interested in us together making a music no one species could make alone.
Okay.
Like we do something together that neither of us could do without the other. And maybe we weren't even thinking about it. One of my favorite examples in the Nightingale project is one of the ones we filmed in Helsinki, actually, which is a good place to film nightingales in Berlin because it doesn't get dark. So this is like what you do in movies. You make stuff up like that. So bird people can tell it's the wrong species, but anybody watching it's like, great, we can see him instead of being dark. And then at one moment but it's very hard to do because you could do it like 10 to 12 and 2 to 4. So you sleep like 2 hours. These are the best times. And after a few nights, you're totally messed up. So one time like 3 a.m., I'm doing this. I felt like the whole thing is kind of pointless, and the nightingales are pissed off because you're looking at them. They can't really hide. Everyone's angry. I'm kind of tired. And later, when I listened to it, I said, "This is the best thing I've done. It's the best interaction." But at the time, it felt like the worst.
And what made it the best when you?
I really felt like I turned into a bird. The way I was playing was changed. Like I played the way nobody would play a clarinet unless they had spent weeks listening to nightingales. Like you've been transformed without planning or thinking about it or composing it, just by doing it, by being there. And for me, the way I'm working is usually like that. You just be in the situation and see what happens and be open to something different. It's furthest away from a more normal music with nightingales and more into something else. Like, is the bird changing what he's doing? I would say not that much, but they have a whole, 150 different phrases they might use. And when they hear what you're doing, they're going to do something different than what they would do if you weren't there. But actually, I want my friend who I wrote the Mockingbird paper with, he's testing this now. Give me a bunch of your recordings. I will analyze it. I will statistically see if the nightingales actually change anything. Because as a musician, I'm not really interested in that. I'm more interested in making this music work rather than this calculating approach. But I can see why
sure a lot of scientists want.
That's what they want. I can see that's what they, that's the kind of thing they do. So we could measure. And but you also have a lot of ornithologists have qualitative ideas. Like when I was playing with a lyrebird in Australia, Lyre, probably one of the craziest bird songs and bird appearances anywhere. I don't know if you know about them. They have a peacock-like tail, the shape of a lyre that you would strum, and they have a song that's so complicated and strange. If I were to tell you the details, you just would
tell me the
laughing.
details. I want them.
You wouldn't believe. Like, okay, so there's the Albert's lyrebird, the weirdest of the two.
How big are they?
They're like, the bird itself is like a big chicken, but the tail is really big, like a peacock thing. So they're like chickens with a big peacock type tail, not so colorful, but beautiful feathers, this wild shape. And their song's really structured, but in a strange way. It begins with a call, like an invocation announcing, I'm here. Whip, 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 whip. Okay, and that phrase is unique to each group. There might be 100 lyrebirds in this area. They're going to all start with that sound. The next valley, they start with a different sound, but they all use it. Okay, and then they start this whole series of imitations. And they're singing in the winter. No one else is singing. It's as if they're trying to conjure up springtime. So they'll sing little bits from every other bird that lives around there, but not all the different sounds they make, just the noisiest ones. It's like they're sampling noise. So they'll go like if a parrot goes, I'm just making that up. Yeah. They're not going to do the do-do-do-do-do part. They'll just do the noisy part. They just take the noisy bits one after another. They'll even imitate with their beaks, flapping wings. Instead of flapping their own wings, they'll go. Like, I'm not going to flap my wings. I'm going to go. Like, it's just performance art. They go on this whole long thing, and then they do it again. One species, it's the same sequence every time. Like they've learned a sequence. The other species, they improvise, and then they switch. They make the sound that sounds like you're tuning into a radio in outer space, like, and then they flip their tail over their head and they climb up on a place where the vines hang down, like sort of Tarzan situation. And they shake the bushes and make this sound called gronking, which sounds like boo, 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 and then they start again. So you see this whole thing. Like it's a whole performance.
How often do they
sections.
do this?
They do this like every day during winter when they've decided it's mating season and no one else is mating. You go spring, summer here. It's winter in Australia. You go to the places where lyrebirds are known to be. And you'll go out and you can hear this just for maybe like a month. And then they don't do it. And then, the females are said to lay one egg every 2 years. And they, they're just like, they can also sing if they have to, but they don't. Usually, like so people have surprised female lyrebirds and they burst into song. It's like they know it also, but they just don't need to do it, which throws a monkey wrench into your whole understanding about hormones or whatever. Like, how does that happen?
Birds throw so many monkey wrenches.
Yeah, exactly.
Into
And
everything.
so lyrebird is totally difficult to explain, and also songbirds have more complicated anatomy. They have a syrinx with like two sides that can make two sounds at once. Like, nightingales have this, sparrows, but like chickens do not. Lyrebird is closer to a chicken. There's no reason he should be able to make all these sounds. It's all in his brain, so this is, and again, not much is known about these critters. There were like three guys, these old characters who studied them. None of them is left anymore. I don't think there's a new generation of people who really go out listening to lyrebirds all the time. There should be.
They should be. Do you have a favorite bird to play with?
I spent the most time, interacting with nightingales.
Yeah.
They're very reliable. But I think there's others I want to play with, like one I played a little bit with in Nightingale's project called the Blythe's Reed Warbler. It's not a famous bird, but people who like music and birds, including a guy who ran this famous record store in Helsinki, he told me, this is the bird you got to find. And it's totally obscure. The guy said, this is the most jazziest bird out there, because they really are. And they sound like they're totally learning from you and copying it. And nobody's studied the song at all. Actually, a few guys in Russia, I started, the deep dive, the Russian bird scientists. So there's a little bit of Russian analysis of this, nobody else.
So mostly is it musicians and scientists who are really paying attention to this?
There's also naturalists, there's kind of nature sound recordists who are sort of like nature photographers, but with sound. And this has risen a lot in the last decades. People go out and listen and record natural environments and don't want to mess with them and develop a sense of aesthetics, how they should be. Because the equipment is much less expensive than it was. It's really easy. So people go out and do this. They record dawn choruses and whales and things like this. And so,
because most of us are missing so much.
yeah,
right.
And you can just go out and you can put on some headphones, turn a recorder app on your phone or get a little recorder, which is going to sound better, and crank it up, and all of a sudden you're hearing, like a dog, everything's louder, and whoa, this is going on. I better pay attention. Your senses are heightened, like a telescope, microscope, putting on glasses to make everything sharp. We can intensify our sense of paying attention to sound.
And then paying attention to all these species.
Yeah, and then we care about them. We never even gave them a moment's thought. And, many people are totally moved hearing the sounds of extinct birds that no one can hear anymore.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
And have you seen, like, in all these years of doing this, do you think people are caring more now?
Absolutely. I mean, we're probably destroying the planet more because we're just going on doing what we're doing, but people are certainly caring more. And a lot of what I'm talking about is not surprising to people. Like, oh, yeah, I record sounds. I know about that. I know about, this kind of information is more out there and accessible, and people are interested in it.
I think so too. Of course, a lot more people care now, I think, than ever about all of this. But at the same time, we're killing everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the human struggle. So you can love nature and then you're destroying it just by doing what you're doing as a human. And that the amount of change that is necessary is great. But I think, it probably can happen if you look at the history of what people have done. We have changed a lot about how we live. And I think the challenges we have now are not the worst we've had in history. We've had a lot of worse ones and pulled through. Like now we have so much going for us, so much knowledge, so much coordination. Like we really might be able to figure this out because people can work together.
Yeah.
But you have to fight that other tendency to destroy that's there. And you don't want to burn all your bridges with everyone who disagrees with you about this or that. You have to get everyone together and try and be positive. So it's, of course, always easier to complain about stuff, as we know. It's more fun to be negative. It's kind of like, but then that's why I find, people say, what are you doing? What's the point of all this? Like, I don't know, but at least it makes people happy, and you pay attention to nature. It's a little bit more valuable, a little closer to something we can understand. It expands our, sense of place in the world if we can appreciate these things, and all these things help in different ways. And that's why I keep doing more of it. And over time, now that, media is ubiquitous, it makes me really want to go out in person and bring people to do these things.
And it connects people. No one's going to deny, hey, whale songs are moving.
I was doing a pond event, a family event at the Rockefeller Preserve in Westchester. And I said, well, sometimes there's nothing going on. You have to wait, sit by the pond and wait. Maybe after an hour, some sounds are going to come. And they said, oh no, this is a family event. Kids have no patience. You got to get them right away. It's like, okay, I can always just play some sound I recorded another day and say, this is this. You could hear something like this. But the moment I said, look, sometimes you just have to wait until something happens. And the parents are checking their watch and say, okay, come on, kids, let's go. The kids said, no. He said we had to wait. They had no problem with the idea of waiting for an hour, playing in a pond. And it's kind of miraculously to me, at this place, after 1 hour, a real specific thing started to happen, like a rhythm coming from plants in the water, just like what I was talking about, but a much better example than maybe I'd ever heard. But you had to wait for an hour, and then it just started to happen, and people were there,
And how does this start? It's not just happening.
We were talking. They knew how to do family events, so we were fishing things out of the pond and looking at it. And little kids were playing, and then we started to hear this sound like boom, 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 like a beat. Like, okay, this is it. This is coming from a plant. This is just the kind of thing I said might happen. And then the whole thing changed, and then they realized that I wasn't just making stuff up. And so that the end of my pond book record has that sound in it, because it's
when does it come out?
In January.
Good.
I can send it to you.
I can't wait. I want to
do it now.
It's so cool. I can't wait to hear
see it.
And
that particular recording, I then played around with it a little bit to make sure the noise of these plants is really loud in the background. There are these mumblings of humans above the water doing whatever it is people do, but the main sound is underwater. So you can listen back up. Every time I'm listening to ponds, you hear surprising things, almost always. And you can often hear things you just don't know what's going on.
And are people still playing with wolves?
There's not enough. There should be more playing with wolves. I don't know why. I think people aren't. Wolves might be next. I might have to go for wolves.
I think so. Wolves really need some PR.
They need some
right
help.
now,
Yeah, right.
Desperately.
I kind of would like to find wild wolves.
You should go play in Yellowstone.
Yeah, Yellowstone.
Oh, that would be amazing.
I like the idea. Yeah,
you should put that on your list.
That's
the
right.
wolves are in desperate need of
wolves
some PR.
are in need. Yeah, people don't like wolves.
There's
the
so much
whole fear of also the sense. Yeah, man versus nature, the old way.
So much fear.
Yeah.
David, this is awesome. I cannot wait to hear all these sounds. Thank you. To learn more about David and to learn about all the music he plays with other species, go to our website, speciesunite.com. We will have links to everything. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Species Unite. If you have a spare moment and could do us a favor, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps people find the show. If you would like to support the podcast, we would greatly appreciate it. Go to our website, speciesunite.com, and click donate. I'd like to thank everyone at Species Unite, including Gary Knutson, Caitlin Pierce, Amy Jones, Paul Healy, Santina Polke, Ayana Peoples, Olivia Deming, and Anna Kollner, who wrote and performed today's music. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.